Currently, he is Assistant Professor of Sociology and Peace Building in the Center for Justice and Peace Building at Eastern Mennonite University in Virginia, USA. He taught at several other universities in the US, including Georgetown University in Washington, DC. He is a national award-winning anti-caste poet, a mentor for emerging scholars, and a writer. His first book, The University as a Site of Resistance, Identity, and Student Politics, conceptualized student resistance in higher education in India. His current research examines socio-political activism of South Asian diaspora in the United States. He serves as assistant editor of South Asia Research Journal published by SOAS London. He also moderates a website called mindsofcaste.org and frequently collaborates with anti-caste, race, and feminist scholars in the area of higher education and social justice. And I'm looking forward to hear from him today. So without further ado, friends, please welcome Professor Pathania.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nikhil. And let me just do the honor. Thank you, Major Saab, Mathura ji, Amarjit ji, and Harjinder ji for inviting me. So I live in Virginia. So I arrived yesterday. I want to special thank Sukhbir Jhaku ji and family for being such a warmest host, and I've been really enjoying Calgary. I want to thank Virdi ji for making this wonderful connection of global local and sharing a vision for equality, and also telling us all about what should we be careful of. And I want to thank Raj Ratan ji, Ashok Das for coming all the way from India, and he's on a tour. So let's give him a big hand. Yeah. And he's doing great work, and this is the work that actually I always been mentioning, that we need to document our struggle. We are doing so much, and that should come, and the future generation should know that. And I want to thank the program. We started on time, so let's give a big hand for each other. I was just joking with Major Saab's daughter. I said, according to Indian time, we are still early. You know? So, and thank you, Payal, for setting this up. And yeah, oh, thank you. Oh, you now see the victim is here. He came late. Okay, now. Thank you, everyone, and I think Virdi ji has already laid the ground that what we are talking about. I'm a scholar of a social movement. I studied social movement, especially the region and caste-based movements around the globe, and in India especially, and now I'm looking at this diaspora here. So I'll be just sharing some of these insight and also the history. Though I was expecting that there will be a lot of students, but you are all an activist. So I think, so I immediately change accordingly. I'll just sit and talk some of those stuff. Okay.
You want me to pull that into the
Uh-huh. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. Oh, here is also one more. Okay, good.
Sorry, can you turn this one off?
Is this on now?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay. Oh, good. Great. So this is the topic we are having: caste discrimination, a global perspective. I'll just try to give that perspective to you. And but before that, let's always start with a positive note that what is happening. So much things are happening, and that's why I'm saying that we are doing so much work that now people, those who don't belong to our ideology, are recognizing it, and we should celebrate that. Now, this is what we are celebrating Ambedkar's birthday today, and you can recognize if you are bringing your children here. Always ask them what are these pictures and who are these big names. So I'll mention some of them today, and I also wanna give you all the best wishes on Buddha Purnima, which was just yesterday and day before. So happy Buddha Purnima to all. And this is the memorial that Ambedkar memorial that Indian Prime Minister just inaugurated recently. And I wanted to show that how beautifully it was done in the shape of a book. Do you see that? Yeah? So, and it was a very special project by the Public Works Department of Delhi. So, whenever you go, do visit this beautiful monument. And this is the contribution, the struggle that is being honored now. And this is the night picture of the same monument. So, this is from Delhi. Okay. Now, and in Hyderabad, you must be seeing in the news that this is one of the tallest third tallest statue in India, installed in Hyderabad. And I think our Hyderabad friends, the credit goes to them. A lot of work that they have been doing. There's a very influential IES lobby, IPS lobby that is working in Hyderabad. And I think that is also one thing that we should congratulate. So with that, there are some of these things that I wanted to, before I think it's always, teacher in me, I always starts with the basic, because I see some of the students are here. So I always want to say that when you talk about caste, there are still a lot of debate that is going on, and I'll share in the end some of the very bogus argument that is coming up nowadays in the scene from the other side. That's why we need to understand that what is caste and what defines caste. Now, what defines caste is, and why I'm saying this, because we are now expanding our scholarship, which is now linking it with racial scholarship. So race, caste, and color, these three categories are very important. We need to be very clear that how are we training the next generation, that when you compare these 2-3 systems, so it should be all these categories should be defined. First is that, of course, caste is by birth, it's hereditary status that you have. And now when I'm saying this, keep thinking of also race, how racial things work. What is race and what is caste? So race is also by birth and race is also hereditary. And then it is with traditional occupation. Now it might differ a little bit with race, but this is about traditional occupation, which Baba Sahib clearly defined, that it is a hierarchical division of laborers, not labor, but laborers. And so that has changed now, at some social mobility is there, but there are still those professions that have not changed. That even in India, with all this social mobility, we are have clearly said that I don't want even my enemy to do such an inhuman profession, cleaning human excreta, dealing with the shit. So he said, this is the profession that should be mechanized. And I keep mentioning that, wrote poetry on this whole black hole. And my point was that what kind of engineers we have produced in these IITs. I happened to meet one of the directors of IIT. I said, how come that in 70 years, these thousands and thousands of people who you sent to Silicon Valley, they established everything, but not a single engineer would have ever thought of developing a simple rudimentary machine that could clean the manhole, right? So it means that science, what we call science is going in a different direction. And I always argue that nowhere in the world, in any university, we never teach our scientists the social writings of Einstein. We are only teaching them the theories. So what is needed in the society, that is what is more important, and that's where this traditional occupation could be changed. So there are deeper values. So of course now say, I got PhD, I granted. So there are all these mobilities happening. We have Prime Minister, we have all kind of people, but things have not changed. Third is that people who believe, and you will see that people who are making this caste-based argument, they still believe in this idea of purity pollution. And that's why it is also linked with traditional occupation. They say, even this day you hear from the upper caste the words like Chude Chamar.
You know? So why do you have it? Means there is some deep down this thing people are believing in this. This is the idea of purity, and no one knows. I mean, they themselves know what does it mean, but that is how it plays out. Fourth point, that there is this superiority inferiority complex that caste system has created, and how to get rid of that complex. Right? Another point, why caste is still persisting? Because even after all the social mobility, all these people, thousands of millions of diaspora around the globe, why it is still persisting? Because we have the idea of endogamy, which is marrying within the caste, right? And that is where it actually keeps continuing reproducing. I always say that a Brahmin marries a Brahmin, produces a Brahmin, right? And that is how this system never ends, right? Now, so this is just a basic background. Now I will move ahead with the word identity that you can apply here, caste identity or any kind of identity. That now, because we are here talking about the caste and in a global perspective in the context of movement. Now, identity here, think of it as a caste identity. So this is from this identity-based model that we have created. How are we using? Now think of our own identity. How are we using in a movement our identity? Is that our goal? Is Dalit as an identity is our goal? The question for you. Or are we using it as a strategy? Are we calling it about the empowerment, Dalit empowerment? Is that the goal? Or how are we deploying this idea of Dalit identity, Bahujan, Mool Nivasi, and so many Dalit Bahujan now came another term. So there are so many of these ideologies that are coming up. Or are we using it as a critique to the caste system? So now, when you put the caste identity and then you look at, then you will analyze, this is a kind of a mapping, that where do we stand? How do we look at it as a movement person, as a scholar, as a researcher? How do we frame our identity? Now, you know that why people gather, like if I ask a very basic question, why do we participate in a protest? Why do we launch a movement? And the reason for every kind of movement is the one word, that every identity has some kind of grievance. So grievance is the key word. That we have grievance, that's why we have. Now, this grievance can be a larger term, umbrella term. Maybe I have been interviewing so many Dalit activists, and I also found that there are very well established engineers in the US who have never faced caste discrimination, never even thought of it, and they made it here. But that's not the point, because that's the same argument upper caste can also make. The point is that we are living in a society with other people, with our citizen, what we call the fellow citizen. If our fellow citizen is having some kind of grievance, then we should be also part of that, because if he's not happy, we are not happy. That's why it takes me back to the question, the conception of nation that Baba Sahib made. He said, what makes a nation? And the first thing he said, the feeling of brotherhood. He said, if we don't have this feeling of brotherhood, then you cannot have even the concept of nation. Right? You might have that at some extent in the West, but there we don't have. We are divided on the basis of caste, thousands and thousands and thousands of subcastes. And everyone is living in their own ghettos, and no one can say that we live in it. And that's why the article I recently wrote for Boston Globe against those people who are saying that there is no caste system in India, I said, you just go to Google and check. You will find Brahmin Association of North America, Kshatriya Association of America, and you will go on, the list never ends. So I'm saying, why there is no feeling of brotherhood? Why there is no Indian association? Why there is no South Asian association? If you are saying that there is no caste, then why are you again going back to these groups? And when you check their website, you will find that inside the website, they also have mentioned matrimonials. So they have their programs, call their own young people and do the matchmaking there. So that is how things kind of keeps perpetuating. So that's just I wanted to give that background, that this is how caste is now. Now how to now annihilate it, what Ambedkar's proposal that he gave. Now, in Ambedkar, I think when he came in the US in Columbia in 1913, I think that was a kind of milestone in his life in terms of his intellectual thought. The way he started interacting with the black scholars here and the black scholarship, which was not fully developed by then, but he was in touch with a very great sociologist who we read nowadays and honor, Professor W.B. Du Bois. So his connection with him through letters, which is now open. So he understood the concept of slavery and linking it with the caste, with caste and then understanding race. So race is more about slavery, and it has that historical angle. But caste, according to Ambedkar, we are having thousands of years of history, unlike race. Race is kind of, in a way, still a new phenomenon, and it keeps changing. And we, as a caste structure, have not changed much in thousands of years. That's why, all of you know this book, Caste, by Isabel Wilkerson. She clearly mentioned one of the punchline of the book. She said, caste is the bones. It's a structure. And, and race is the skin. And class is the clothing. Like you wear good clothing, you change your class. But race is changing. But what is not changing is caste for thousands of years. And that structure is so intact. And that's why even in 21st century, you keep hearing these brutal, heinous, inhuman treatment that is done to people, that the way Dalits are being treated. Dalit women not only raped, but they are paraded naked and then they piss on their bodies. What kind of mindset actually you can think of, how deep rooted it is, right? So that is what it is, we are talking about. It's such a deep rooted structure that has not changed. So Ambedkar in his book, Caste in India, it's a small booklet, comes in a booklet form also. If you find time, do read, where he's kind of explaining that it's an outlasted slavery. Now, linking it more with the race, and I told you about the labor, he said caste is caste. You can't actually compare it with any other form. Caste is caste. And it transcends class, race, and labor. And see now many Marxist scholars who came and started bringing the idea of labor and kind of misrepresenting this idea of labor and in the Indian context. Ambedkar warned them. You remember in 1925, Communist Party was formed, and later Ambedkar was opposing one of the act called Kala Kanun by the Britishers. Ambedkar wanted to oppose, and he needed help of the communists and Communist Party people. But before he actually going the negotiation, he argued with them. He said, "If you support me, tell these labor class that capitalism is not their first enemy. It's the Brahminism that is their first enemy." And communists didn't understand until the late 90s, until by the time they lost everything, all the ground. So I think that's where these three words, class, race, and labor, that's where Ambedkar's whole scholarship, you can basically see these are three axes where his whole scholarship moves around. Now, coming back to the real thing that now we are caste, as Nikhil was mentioning, that as Hindu migrated, South Asian migrated, caste also comes. But how do you look for the caste markers? Race is very clear, right? You look at people and you find out. But what are the markers of caste?
Names.
Right? Surname, right? And you know now a lot of these testimony that are being collected. Now people, I heard from many people who are joining IT industry. So when they join, their boss, because they are directly recruited from India, now came here, and the bosses don't know what their caste is. So if they invite them in a party, they said, "Oh, let's have a swimming pool party this weekend." So now all this staff comes, and everyone has to jump in the pool and to take off their shirt. So the first thing another marker, sacred thread, So, you are actually always check out all the options, that what is all those markers. But it is much more than this. Is just a very basic understanding. But what research are saying, that it is actually, see, earlier caste marker was different. With body language, with the dirty clothes and all those things, you could easily see caste. Now it is hidden. It's becoming so hidden that now one of my, and so now going back to Ambedkar was saying that even the untouchables had to wear the black thread on their wrist to identify. So there was complete clear markers. And another marker, I think, was also, you said surname, but names used to also be the markers of caste in previous time. Like I remember in my village, even till date, we have these very ugly names, which is even hard to pronounce, but we never thought of consciously. We never even thought of consciously. Like in my next door neighbor, who is my part of my family, I don't want to even say that name, but the literal meaning of that name, it's Haryani name, literal meaning of the name is the space where you throw your trash. So if these kind of things goes on, and that's why Baba Sahib was so much aware of these when he was actually writing about and later on converted to Buddhism. It reminded me just I remember a very interesting thing about there was a person in Delhi who was the founder of Samyak Prakashan. Shanti. So he actually long ago, I think maybe 20 years ago, he came to my hometown and I was lucky to spend some time with him. So he was his family coming from a very well-off family in Delhi, a charter family from Delhi. And he said their family used to go to Baba Sahib's bungalow in Delhi to pay visit and all. So when he was born, his father actually went with a sweets, the box of sweets, take to Baba Sahib's house. And now it was morning time, and Baba Sahib was getting ready for office, and this guy reached, and he said, "What happened?" He says, I have a son today. My son was born this morning. He said, "Oh, good." So Baba Sahib was diabetic, so he never used to eat sweet. So he gave it to all other people working in this. And then Baba Sahib said, "So, naam kya rakha hai? What have you named?" And he said, "Sir," very proudly he said, "Sir, Gulab Singh." So Baba Sahib looked at him, he was puzzled. He said, "वो गुलाब जिसको नेहरू सुबह अपने कोट में टांगते हैं और शाम को फेंक देते हैं, कह रहे ऐसे फेंके हुए नाम क्यों रखते हैं?" So Baba Sahib then picked up a newspaper, morning English newspaper, and he found that that year Shanti Swarup was recognized as the best, or I think he got a Nobel Prize for as a scientist. He gave him the name Shanti Swarup. And the guy actually, was a for life. So this is what the power of name is. So there is always something in the name. People say there is nothing in the name, but there is name which actually makes it. Okay, now going back. So all these markers that we have, recent research says that caste is now becoming almost invisible. Professor David Moss, who actually I just recently wrote a paper with him, is coming next week. He has studied southern part of India, the caste system, and his conclusion of 30 years of study, he said now caste is turning inwards. It's going more inwards in the mind, and it is hard to detect. So it means that's why when I started this, or with another a psychiatrist from UK, Professor Shushri Jadhav. So we started this blog, which is still running as a website, called Minds of Caste. That these are people who are problematic, those people who are psychologically wounded. They are the people who are still carrying this idea of caste in their brain, right? So mindsofcaste.com that we are. So it is turning inwards, and that is why we need new strategies, right? And for that, we need to also, when we do this, we need to understand it deeply deeply and to understand deeply, we need to first understand our history. We need to always go back in that what this movement is all about. We are talking about a global movement today, but how did it start and who has been the inspiration? So let's pay homage to all those people who actually contributed. And I want to pay homage to Raju Kambleji, who started here in Canada and inspired a lot of young generation who become part of the movement. So my professor Vivek Kumar, who has been here several times, so he said that we need to always, and he has been one of the leading voice in Indian media, who's always raising Dalit issues. And I think he trained so many people in that way. He said without that you cannot bring unity if you don't read history, because there will be always a lot of confusion about history, and you cannot build a movement. So one thing, let's understand what is pre-Ambedkar's legacy. And I'm just doing it because there are some new faces I see that they need to understand what was there for Ambedkar when he was taking off. And first thing actually comes to my mind is Mahatma Jyotiba Phule. And that's why when you read Ambedkar, he said, Phule is my social guru and my religious guru is Buddha. So Adhyatmic spiritual guru. So these are some of these Phule's things that he is known for. Many people actually still, there's so much writing on Phule, but I think the major contribution that he has is the girls' education, which actually we started talking much later in India, but he had that vision in 1848. He started first school, fought against child marriage, and this is a kind of revolutionary struggle that he led. And all this, what we read in the history, Indian independence history, Raja Ram Mohan Rai and all, it came much later. But you don't see, they don't teach our children that there was a guy who was Phule, who did that long time ago, and did it successfully. Satyashodha Samaj, Truth Seeking Society in 1873. And then he did so many other things. Just wanted to mention that he wrote several books and also started so many newspapers, helped people. There were so many fans of him who actually started different newspaper, and he was kind of being part of that. Second thing is his wife, Mata Savitribai Phule, and her contribution is immense. I mean, there is always the way they portray now in media and in also school textbook. I think her contribution was much more than of the contemporaries. First lady teacher of India, and that's why when you look at the student movement, I don't have that much time to explain all that.
Student movement in JNU, HCU, Osmania, they started opposing the Radhakrishnan's birthday on September 5th and started celebrating Mata Savitribai's Phule birthday as a teacher's day, because this is the real teacher in a way who did among all the odds. A radical social activist, they define her, and she was a poet. I didn't know that until recently that she was a poet. She wrote a lot of poems, and some of her poems are very, very, very popular. And she also, in those days, imagine she was reading and writing this kind of stuff in Marathi, then later was translated in. So this is one of her very popular poem called "Go Get Education." Now think of when we talk about Ambedkar, educate, agitate, organize, this slogan, I mean, Baba Sahib had this inspiration from, there was already existing literature, and that's where Phule realized first time the value of education. And Baba Sahib was so honest when he was writing. He said, I didn't do much. All I did is continue the legacy of Mahatma Phule. He recognized everything. Now, look at what a beautiful poem. It was in Marathi, I translated it. So, but that is what Savitribai Phule is. And then, of course, Shauji Maharaj. And without him, it was hard to imagine Ambedkar's intellectual contribution that he did. And it applies in the same way in today's time, that without the role of some kind of system, how would a scholar perform? So I think Shauji's contribution is immense. And then one of these things I wanted to cite and elaborate, that Ambedkar said law and order are the medicine of the body politic. Body politic is the system. the system that we have, political system, cultural system, And when the system gets sick, medicine must be administered. Now, until last century, we were using the same remedy for the caste system that was given, whatever, the Indian reformers. But now that remedy has changed. Now said, no, it's the Dalit who needs to lead their movement. We don't want others to represent us. And the remedy should be changed. It should be administered, and it should be revising. We can't apply the same strategy that Phule did or Ambedkar did in 21st century. We need to go beyond and ask for more. And that's why we are leading this struggle. Now you see the victory in Seattle, victory in California, Toronto School District Board. These are the new strategies. And I want to come to that what are those things that we need for a movement to know. Now, this is a quote that I wanted to quote from for an annihilation of caste. That when you're thinking of the movement, he said, always revisit. And in a way, this question still remains a question of 21st century, that we are still dealing with this. We still hear thousands and thousands of news in Indian media that a Dalit sat next to a upper caste person and he was beaten up or thrashed. Dalits still can't actually, riding a horse for their weddings. These are all those still questions. We are still dealing with the interdining and intermarriage thing. And then you have the way he's describing, you see the beautifully, caste is a notion. It's the state of mind. The destruction of caste does not therefore mean the destruction of physical barriers. We think that by wearing these fancy clothing and living in the fancy houses, buying good cars and all, will change their mindset. No, it is not even changing our mindset, because we are not going to the root of our problem, that we have to devise a strategy that can heal our wound. So there is so much deeper wound that we have. Right? So do read Annihilation of Caste. Now, this is a cartoon drawn by one of a Dalit cartoonist, a very popular guy whose cartoon is being used by The Hindu as well. He said, Dalits did not get justice because court and police protected caste Hindu, but in the battle of self-respect. And that is where our movement come in. And you remember, this is again taken back, the self-respect movement started by Periyar, and then continued, and Ambedkar did the same thing, and we are doing the same thing, that this is the self-respect. We don't want your name now. We can name ourselves. We don't want your ritual. Baba Sahib given our ritual of Buddhism. We need to do all that. And I was so happy now. And this movement, I can talk whole day about that, how many things have changed. I studied the Dalit student movement in Osmania University, and I was so happy to see that the way now they print their wedding cards, it is in a very, very Buddhist style. Now they have completely changed that. And many of them don't even do that celebration. They say, I said, why are you not celebrating? He said, this is a feudal show off. He said, our society is living still in a very, very backward state, and we are trying to become here kings and queens for a day. He said, we need to go beyond, save this money for our kids, educate them. That's why, the whole philosophy goes back to the education. We still don't have enough doctors. We still don't have enough PhDs, and I can tell you the whole data on the US. We are 3 people in social sciences who are in the university position in social sciences. I don't know about sciences, which is such a big gap. Where are we? So or maybe we are just running in one direction, which is kind of the popular direction, going in the engineering and medical, and that's all we do. And then, but how are we contributing back to the society? Now, these people who wants to read Ambedkar, he has written so many hundreds of books, but these are 5 texts that are very important to understand Ambedkar's thought. And one, those who are interested in economy, do read. It's called The Problem of Rupee in India. Very important text for those who are doing the economy in the universities. Now, Ambedkar said that you need to have if you want the political reform, that you have to do the reconstruction or reorganization of Hindu society. And he kept saying that again and again in his newspapers. And that question is still we need to rethink that what kind of reconstruction, and reconstruction is happening through movements. And that's why movements are important. So I'll keep pushing this point that movement, and what is movement? It is not just about going and protesting. I want to just show quickly that what kind of movement are we leading, and it is not everyone has to go and shout slogans and all. There are different ways that we are doing movement in Dalit society. One thing is that running these newspapers, and that's what Baba Sahib did, and that's what Phule did. Again, I mentioned you that Phule started a few newspapers, helped his friends to build newspaper. So newspaper as building the intellectual history, and you now look at, for example, these three popular newspaper we have, like just let me put for people who don't understand Hindi. These three papers, Mook Nayak, Janata and Bahishkrit Bharat. These three papers, imagine one after the other, and Baba Sahib had actually kept planning and how much time, and I mean many of us, those who run a little bit of journals, see how much time does it take, but he was constantly busy and actually expanding his circle of printing newspapers, and that is the part of the intellectual movement, I would say. And now I also want to pay homage to L.R. Bali, that actually who had the opportunity to stay as a research assistant to Baba Sahib for a few days, for a small time, I don't know exact number, but he published Bhim Patrika for a long time. He passed away, I think, in 2010 or 12. But one of the great, he learned from Baba Sahib that how it is so important. The guy was born in Lahore, that's why he knew Urdu. He started Bhim Patrika in Urdu and then went on to... Oh, still alive. Okay. Oh, sorry. That was the person who I had in mind is Bhagwan Das. Bhagwan Das passed away in 2010. Yeah. So he's another guy I wanted to mention. Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for reminding. Yeah. So Punjabi and English. See how many languages that has been contributing. Then, and I think Ashok interviewed him as well. And here is Bhagwan Das. And Bhagwan Das ji, he also met Baba Sahib, and he is the one who wrote Thus Spoke Ambedkar, and he wrote 2 volumes of it, and he kept publishing. He also published his autobiography. So another way to look at this movement, Dalit movement, is that the amount of things that we are publishing, right? And the guiding our future generation. And it's same thing now from Phule to Ambedkar, and then Kanshiram, that if you think in just a political term. And these 3 major, same thing had different translation, but I think Kanshiram was also very well aware, though he was the busiest person in his life, but still knew that finally the written word matters, and he took time to write these and guide it, and these are such an important milestone that he has done in his life. And now that goes on. Now look at this, it's not just this one book, but how much he has done taking inspiration from Baba Sahib. You see the things that he have done, organizing and then publishing. Bahujan Nayak, Bahujan Sangathak, Bahujan Ekta. These are the things, Bahujan Sandesh Punjab, all these under his leadership that he started. See, imagine one man, how much he has done in his life. And Bahujan Sahitya, he published in Hindi. Shoshit Sahitya, Punjabi. And Shramik, these are the things that this is the contribution of. So we only know Kanshiram is a political leader and he fought election, made party and all. No, but I think deep down he knew that this is what we need. Oppressed Indian, one of the most popular one. This is where the intellectual. That's why I think I grew up watching. My father was a bomb safe person, and I grew up reading all those weekly, monthly newspaper, and I think that's what I used to cut Baba Sahib's quotation and post on the wall, and that's what inspired me to become an activist. And Bahujan Sangathak, I think it's still running through BSP. And some of this picture I wanted to show that at the same time, see the vision that doing all the political activism, doing writing, but then when he was also making this whole action force within through writings and meeting, training young people, and this was his contribution. And all these things, when you look at his slogans, ek note, ek vote, ye sare, these are all written in his Bahujan Sangathak as well, in oppressed Indian as well. So he provided the intellectual resource through newspaper, have it debated, and then also implemented. So it was a like whole chain and that's why I would say that was the success of his movement, that he continued intellectual and the movement together. Now, not ignoring that how big the Dalit literary movement we have. I mean, for the time being, we just highlighting some of the text, but look at these are the writings of Professor Vivek Kumar, that he has done so far, I think 15 books, keep writing about Dalit agenda, keep writing about Ambedkar's democracy and all. I think this, and he's been very persistent with his writing. And in the same way, this is one way to very academic. So academically, there are so much going on. Second, when you look at the Marathi history especially, all these people who are actually after Ambedkar's death, so many of these young students who started writing their biographies, and these are part of our literary movement. These autobiographies have guided the whole generation of students, right? And then you have, and women were not behind in this. Women, there are so many. You have from Sushila Tank Bore, and so many of them I have interviewed, and now you have a whole series, and I want to come to that too. And then you have Mohandas Mishra, Jhutan, one of my most popular, most famous, I think, that I had the opportunity to meet Professor Om Prakash Valmiki, and I asked him, I said, that time when he wrote Jhutan, that debate in 90s when Jhutan came in 90s, the debate among the upper caste circle said, ye koi sahitya thodi hai, this is not the sahitya. है ना, क्योंकि ये तो गाली गलौज का साहित्य है। भाई जब समाज में गाली गलौज हो रहा है तो साहित्य में भी आएगा, जैसा समाज है वैसा साहित्य भी होगा। तो मैंने उनसे पूछा कि आपका इतना क्रिटिसिज्म हो रहा है, व्हाट डू यू सजेस्ट? ही सेड ईच एंड एवरी दलित, every oppressed person should write their biographies, and that is the way you can contribute, because these stories should go out. We have been hearing for hundreds of years all these just bogus stories about which doesn't make any sense, which we can't relate. We are taught those literature which actually we can't relate with our life. So where is our life being represented in academia? And that's why now you see Jhutan has been part of many university syllabuses, right? Another one, Murdaiya, one of our JNU professor, he passed away a few years ago. Manikarnika, two of his autobiographies that he has written, and another one actually from Bengal. I didn't want to ignore that part. That he is another one, Manoranjan Vyapari. He's been now also in the politics now. Very important biography. I think the way he talks about Chandal, that the community caste he comes from. Right? So. And then the cinema, that Dalit cinema that has emerged. You see, these are all part of movement. And what makes our movement global is all these things that we are doing. Now, you can't think publishing a book now only in Indian context. As Virdiji was saying, this local, global, this connection has already built. So the cinema that is being produced, we are watching here. Like I'm staying with the Jaku families, and they're all watching what is being produced in India. Maybe 20 years ago that was not the case, but that is what our cinema is, and 4 of our major filmmakers that are there, and I think they are doing wonderful job highlighting that there was never a hero as a Dalit. Dalit was never a hero in any of the picture, and they are changing that whole trajectory of Indian cinema. And then autobiographical writings of young scholars. All these popular scholars from Suraj to Yashika and Tanmozi. Very recent book came, you should read this. It just came a few months ago. Trauma of Caste. Taking a very different stand that how we deal with this internal trauma that people carry because of living in this inhuman structure. So very important recent writings of young scholars. And then another, I call it a movement, translation. Now you see, many of the writings were written in Marathi. Most of these autobiographies were in Marathi, but then many of them got translated into Hindi. Hindi's one got translated to English, Punjabi and all. Translation itself is a part of this movement. And that's why some of those things, for example, there are so many Indians one, but I wanted to highlight these three names. Very important one, Gail Ahmed, who actually did a lot of translation. Professor Ellie and Vasant Moon. Biography was also translated. So these are the things that I think are translation as a business. Another thing, transnational anti-caste movement that we have so much going on in the US now, starting with this first caste survey that has been done, and done by a non-academician. So which is actually, I always tell my friend, I said we should take the responsibility that we, being in academics, have not done, but someone from non-academic field has done these surveys. I think so that is, and then you have now Dalit History Month is being celebrated all around the globe, in almost in every country wherever our people are. I remember this participating in this historic congressional meeting hearing in Washington DC, and this was a very landmark hearing where we were discussing these whole and now you see the result in terms of California case or Seattle case and all. And then same in UK, there's so much going on in UK, but I think the movement needs more strategies. They need to learn from we need to learn from each other. And then you have the new media that is coming up in the form of magazines and the things. So I think some of these for the space, I just don't mention everything, but there are so much that we read. I mean, if you do the survey, these are the widely read newspapers, widely read blogs that we have, and we have other things that are going on in academics as well. New websites are coming up. So this is the website we are running here, and then you have Ashok Das has recently now he's talking about that we need to have a media, right? And this is another requirement that we need to. We don't have any media. Even actually after ruling of one of our party in a bigger state, and we could not develop that media. So how can we do that? That's another thing if we want our movement to be a global movement, transnational movement. That's another one. So. And we should be very thankful to people who are running Desh Do and Ambedkar Times. They have been running for so long, and many of them were not even recognized. I think we should organize more programs and honor these people who have been doing such a great work. And Samyak Prakashan, I already mentioned, one of the leading who actually has been publishing a lot. If you go to their website, I think personally, because I've been there, maybe you can say 25,000 books they must have published just on Ambedkar and our movement, highlighting our young scholars. And Ashok Das has now come up with his new Das publication. That is another contribution. So I think he's here. So let's give him a big hand for that. And then you look at the Ravidasiya movement, and I think I don't need to even say that how wide it is, not just in US but in Europe, all around Europe is expanding, and now I hope it expand in other part of Asia as well, wherever our people are. But see, there's so many, the chapters we have all around the US, and this is this is what the movement is. And then you have three major groups in US that are being functioning, and I think each one has contributed in their own way. And as a movement scholar, I always say, some people say, why do we have so many Dalit organizations? Why can't be there one? And I'm telling them, I said, we need to have more organizations. I said, think of we have only 3% Brahmins in India, but they are in every party, they are in every district, leaders, there are leaders after leaders, all are Brahmins. We are 17%, just Dalits. And we have only few organizations. We should have more parties. Every state has their own parties. So that's how you do the representation, because we have a lot of, what I said, with grievance. And that grievance cannot be addressed just with one party. We can all come together, but we need to work in all. And I think this is a good example, because US is geographically so big. They need to have these organizations where people can meet, but they need to have more chapters. And then you have now another big contribution is that universities are taking over. Now universities are contributing a lot in terms of academic scholarship. University of Michigan, Brandeis University started a caste journal, first caste journal in the US. And I think they have been doing good job in the last 3 years, and they have now a full-fledged established scholarship and a full-fledged established journal that they have. Now, there are all these, you must be hearing when the California and the Seattle thing is going. Now there is so much debate that is going on social media, and caste as a protected. Why do we need a protected category and all? And the oppositions are giving a lot of these bogus argument. You know, the latest argument I heard from one of the professor from University of London, and which you would laugh at. The guy said, he's a law professor, and he's arguing, he said, if you read the history, all our holy books are saying that these people are outcast. They are Dalits, they are outcast. If they are outcast, why they are talking about caste? So I'm saying that we have to face these kind of ridiculous argument in future. And how do we devise our strategy? Because that's where they get more space in media. They are the one who get because their media, it's their digital space. So that's why one of the criticism I have of the movement, that we need to have more in-person organizing. This digital media can easily be manipulated, controlled. We need to have these kind of gatherings more. We need to form, wherever we are, we need to do this in-person grassroots organizing. Right? And otherwise, our movement can be co-opted by anyone, anytime, if we just depend on the digital media. So that's one of the things I wanted to say. Now, some of the successes, Seattle success, Toronto and California success. With that, I think I should stay, but I would love to have some questions from you. But I think with this success, we should celebrate and have a. This is for us. Yeah. Thank you very much.